Welcome to Under Pressure, the podcast about becoming better men when it counts. I'm Cody Laughlin.
And I'm Brian Alfaro. Each week, we have honest conversations about building businesses, leading families, carrying responsibility, and the pressure that comes with trying to do all of it well. If that sounds like your world, you're in the right place.
No hype, no pretending we've got it all figured out, just real stories, real struggles, and what we're learning along the way. Let's get into it.
Cody got some Buffalo Trace.
Good morning, man.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Good morning, man. People
Absolutely.
are going to think we're alcoholics here drinking.
No, we're not, man. We're not. But it is nice to kind of break a glass and
For sure.
share some fun stories over a nice good old bourbon. So
For
good
sure.
to be here again today. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation on the show about reflecting back on when we were younger and things we would tell ourselves. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I've been kind of going through this mental exercise here recently. I'm approaching 40 here in the next few months. I know I don't look like it. But
40's a new 30.
That's right. I keep telling myself that. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but as I've gotten closer to 40, especially this past few months, I have found myself, whether intentfully or not, reflecting on my life up to this point, and it's funny. My wife was like, "Oh, you're going through a midlife crisis." Like, no, calm down. But I was like, genuinely just like thinking back on the times that, I've spent over the last couple of years professionally, personally, all the different events and decisions throughout the years and kind of how I've gotten to this point in life. And it made me reflect on what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago on the show, where we said, like, man, what if you could talk to your, 18-year-old self? What would you tell yourself? And I was kind of hoping we could spend some time talking about that today, because it's a fun mental exercise to go through. Like, man, what are some of those lessons that you would tell yourself if you could go back, or you could sit to your, and talk to your 18-year-old self? So what do you think?
That's an interesting mental exercise for sure. I think we all were very different people at 18 years old. Had a lot of, I would say, maybe misconceptions or outlooks on life that maybe ended up being in reality much different.
Are you saying we didn't know everything at 18?
We didn't know anything. So sorry to any 18-year-olds that are listening, or even if you're 19 or 20 or 21. It is interesting for sure how when you're at that age in life, you're legally, technically an adult, but you're still a kid at the end of the day. You tell yourself you're an adult, you want to act like you're an adult, even going into your early 20s, 21, 23, 25 even, you're like, I'm an adult. You got all this experience, 25 years in life. The reality is you don't know anything. You haven't really went through like the trials and the tribulations. If you haven't worked in your career long enough, if you don't have a partner or spouse, if you don't have a family, if you haven't done anything entrepreneurially or had failures in business or, in your corporate career, man, you just don't know what you don't know. And you have a lot of, misconceptions. And I think back then I had, adult confidence, but didn't have the adult competence. I felt very confident and, could take on the world, right? You wake up, you're excited every day. You're usually in really good shape. You have good energy, good vibes, but man, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to is like, it's a very reckless mindset at 18, and not reckless in a bad way per se, but it's like you said, you're trying to figure out life without having any type of experience whatsoever. And I know, coming out of high school, college and such, being so young, I was such a bonehead. Like, I felt like I was mature for my age, and I grew up quick. I've shared with you, and I think other people we talked about on the show, like I had my first kid at 18. So you grow up kind of quickly.
Then you really feel like an adult.
Then you really feel like an adult, even though you're not.
Yep.
I'm a kid raising a kid.
Yep.
But having said that, yeah, like you said, sitting in the seat today and having kind of more wisdom and more battle scars and more experience behind you, it makes you a much more confident person in a way that, was not there when I was 18. My confidence there was false confidence.
Sure.
At 18 and such. And I was kind of thinking about like man, what would be the few things that I would go back and tell myself, if I could, like the top priorities, like what would be the most important things I would talk to myself about. And I think one of the things that I would go back and tell myself is you're not you're not going to know what you're doing, nor does anybody else at that
Mhm.
age. You're not going to have it figured out. You're not going to be able to take on the world and establish your credibility to the world at that age, because it's hard for people to take you seriously when you're 18, especially when they're older, because
Sure.
they've been through it, they know, right? And yeah, it's an interesting perspective, reflecting back on the mindset I had going through that, and I thought I knew what I was doing, and I thought I knew what I wanted in life. But like I said, like fast forward here nearly, well, 20 years later, which is hard to say.
Mhm.
Um, Man, I had no clue.
Yep. Well, let's talk about some of those things. Sounds like one of those things you would tell yourself even now back then is we're all still trying to figure it out as we go. You think you've got life figured out at that age. You might think you're approaching a point in life where you have life figured out, but the reality is you don't have life figured out, and we're still kind of there's that funny saying, "Fake it till you make it." I know as a new parent now, it's a very similar type feeling. You might think you have parenthood figured out when they get to certain stages, and the kids, they grow so fast. You're like, oh crap, no, I don't have it figured out anymore. Now they're a toddler, and then they go from a toddler to the next stage, right? So we are kind of faking it till we're making it, and nobody really knows what they're doing. But I think you learn that all that experience starts to really help you understand that life is really what I learned, or what I've been telling myself is life is more about not necessarily figuring it out. Like, it's not about figuring out life, or maybe even making big decisions that you think you're going to have a positive impact, right? Like when you're 18 or 19 or 20, you're telling yourself, like, what is the one big thing I need? What's the job I need to get? What's the degree I need to go get? What's the business I need to start? What's the investment I need to make? What is the big thing that I need to do that's really going to catapult my career, catapult my finances, catapult my relationships? What I've learned, and what I still have to remind myself today, is life's really about making really good choices and forming really good habits, really good daily habits. And I think that's a lesson that, when me talking to my 18-year-old self now, I would tell myself, focus on the habits, focus on the daily habits. And then once you form those good habits, do your very best to protect them, to not break them. And some things in life are, of course, going to throw a curveball at you. Like, I had a lot of great habits that got uh, put to the side when I had a newborn baby. But that's a valid reason to some of those habits to get put aside. But overall, consistency and having small daily wins and forming good habits, that's something I think my 18-year-old self, knowing that, would benefit from. I think a lot of times as an 18-year-old, you're looking for a home run. You're
Yeah,
looking for that home run, and there aren't a lot of home runs in life. It's all
sure.
about forming daily habits, forming good relationships, so that you can get the opportunity to step up to the plate to try to swing. Ball gets thrown your way that you can hit.
If I could phrase that, it would be you don't find your path, you build it,
Mm,
right? It's like you said, you kind of start to learn those habits and those skills that you can apply to your life consistently every single day, that will stack up over time. And then what really starts to kind of create your path in life and such. And I was that person at 18 years old where, man, I want the overnight success. I want to be there now. I, you know, I wanted to be retired by the time I was like 25,
mm,
like, just this fantasy world. And, but you realize that life doesn't work that way, especially when it comes to a career or finances. I mean, it's not ladders, it's like a jungle gym,
mm.
it's chaos, and everything is uh, always in disarray. There's always going to be something that throws a wrench in your plan. But if you've built those consistent habits, if you put those things in place that allow you to stay the course over time, you'll find that you'll build that path versus trying to find it. And having that clarity now, older in life, is a perspective I wish I could have taken with me when I was 18 for sure.
Yeah. What are some of those daily habits for you that maybe you have now, or have had, sort of you're in a more mature phase of life, that you wish you had when you were 18 years old? I know health is often a big one, right? Like when you're 18, you're eating what you want, fast food, the chips, the candy, the sodas. You can drink as much as you want if you like to drink beer or liquor or whatever. And then, you get into 30 and you're like, "Oh, man, it doesn't feel so good." Then you get to 35, you're like, "Whoa, that really doesn't feel good." Then you get to 40 and you're like, "Whoa, I don't think I can do this anymore."
Slow down, killer. I still feel okay,
Okay,
man.
okay.
Aside from the occasional backache, I'm okay.
There you go. But what are some things, that you habit-wise would tell your 18-year-old self, like, "Man, you should start working on these habits today, because in 20 years when you're where I'm at, you're gonna, see a lot of positive impacts from them."
Yeah. Health is an absolute must. And I've always been kind of a health nut from the time that I was very young. I played sports and all the way through high school. I stayed physically active in other sports outside of that. So I've always believed in being healthy in general. So health is an absolute asset for sure. It's one of your biggest
Sure.
assets. Um, I don't know if this is particularly a skill or how you would quantify this, but patience, kind of alluded to already. I'm not innately a patient guy. I want something and I want it now, especially if I'm got my mindset on it. When I was younger, that was even more pronounced. I I was expecting things to happen quickly, and that created a lot of stress and friction internally when it didn't happen as fast as I wanted it to. So I think for me, it was trying to learn how to be patient. And that was kids will do that to you.
Mm.
I had when I started having my second daughter a little later in life, and then now my third. Kids will teach you patience, whether you want it to or not. It will definitely do that. I would also say, um, like putting yourself first, and I mean what I mean about that is like kind of self development,
Sure.
reading the books, reading a book every day, listening to a podcast every day. Which when I was 18, podcasts weren't a really big thing, but now they're everywhere. So I'm kind of dating myself, but you get the point. It's right. It's like to me, it was working on myself first before I did anything else for the day. I get up in the morning, I go to the gym, maybe do a little meditation, like I said, listen to a podcast or read a book about something that I wanted to learn, finances, investing, entrepreneurship, whatever it was. And doing that consistently every single day before I did anything else, before I went to work, before I go, hang out with friends or whatever, like that was an absolute must because, you know, you end up you end up kind of picking up nuggets along the way every day doing that and such, and then you can go apply it to your everyday life.
I wanna go a little deeper on the patient side of thing, because I think that's a word that a lot of it's a big umbrella. A lot of things fall under patience. When you talk about patience and giving your 18-year-old self advice to be patient in life, okay, well, there's a lot of things I would say you should be patient on. So one of those things might be patient with your finances, not looking to get rich overnight, not looking to hit that home run. Small consistent investments compound dramatically over a long period of time. Putting $100 in a savings account when you're 15, continuing that habit into 18, 20, and then the number grows, obviously, as you make more money, making small investments into stocks, putting money in IRAs and 401ks. These aren't things that produce fruit overnight. But when you're 55, 65, 70, you're going to be very, very happy you made that $100 investment. So patience with your money. The other one too is, I think, patience, and I know you can probably speak eloquently about this one, patience in relationships. Getting married too fast, dating too fast, committing too fast. And unfortunately in today's society, you see that all too often. And it's been happening for decades. So I'd hate to say just now, but people, they meet their high school sweetheart and they get married at 18, 19, 20, and they're not an adult yet. They're not the fully formed version of themselves. They don't have enough life experience on both sides. And there's plenty of high school sweetheart stories. I have several friends that are like that are amazing, but it seems to become more of the exception than the norm nowadays. And you see more, the divorce rate is higher than ever before. And there's more struggling marriages than ever before. So those two categories are just two great examples of things you need to be patient on as a 18-year-old person. Is like, don't rush into things relationship wise too fast, whether it's marriages, dating, partnerships, business things, and then don't try to get rich overnight. Be patient with your money as well.
I was terrible at that. Like you said, I was looking for the home run coming out of the gate, and I was looking for like what was the biggest and best thing that I can do. And at the time, it was a fun experience to go through, but then it never was fruitful. Like I never found momentum. I never really did find success in building wealth or financial footprint, I guess, that I wanted to do, so to speak. But to your point, if I like, and I relate back to my experiences as a baseball player, I played baseball all the way through high school, where look at some of the most successful baseball players out there. They're not the guys hitting 60 home runs a year.
Mm.
You know, they're the guys that are consistently hitting the base shots every single time they get up to the plate. You know that they're going to be clutch because they're going to get on base every time. And that's how, looking back now, that's how I wish I would attack my finances then. Quit going for the home run and just focus on the singles and the doubles. Like
Yep.
focus on just the base shots and let them stack. Cause you're right. It's a compounding effect. Now over the span of 20 years, that's a dramatic compounding effect over time. And it feels so slow when you're going through the process and it feels like, man, nothing's really happening. And then all of a sudden 20 years later, you look up and you're like, holy smokes, you know, this is really turned into something very fruitful, versus just trying to get that one hit wonder, you know?
And
It-
not having patience there, I would argue too, it has a unfortunately, and we've both experienced it, it has a not a long term, but a medium term impact. It sets you back. It sets you back. So not having patience in your relationships, getting married, struggling for a few months or years, however long it takes, then getting divorced and then going through the pain of that, or making poor financial decisions and not investing or trying to put all your like I'm gonna take all the money in my bank account and I'm gonna put it in crypto and hope it goes up. Whatever your decision sort of is, it might take you years to rebuild the confidence to develop another relationship and trust somebody to marry them, and it might take you years to restock your bank account to get to a point where you can make other types of investments. So that's I think that's something that you don't think about as much when you're younger. Is you worked really hard for what you have, and you worked really hard to put yourself in a position to be successful. One seemingly small decision can often set you back several years.
yeah. What's interesting about that, the compounding effect not only works in the positive, but also works in the negative,
Correct.
you know?
Yep.
And when you, sometimes when you make a decision that doesn't work out, or maybe you got impatient and you made a bonehead decision, it kind of leads to sometimes making other decisions that are similar. You can very easily start stacking up, losses, so to speak, where you're like, crap, well, this didn't go well and this didn't go well, right? And it kind of becomes a snowball. So it's definitely a compounding effect. And especially like with relationships and such, I think the challenge with relationships, especially for us, is we expect, like, we and look at ourselves like, oh, well, we're good, we're not the problem, it's everybody else the problem. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
want to
Right.
I want to fix you.
Right.
And at 18, I I probably was pretty cocky and arrogant, thinking like, oh, I'm good, it's not me, it's my spouse that's the problem or whatever. And you absolutely cannot maintain a relationship having that mentality. It's two parties in a relationship, and you absolutely have to recognize that you both have things that are great about each other, but you also both have flaws that, you know,
Sure.
that hopefully are complementary to one another and that you can work on together. But it's a partnership, and partnerships don't happen overnight. They do build over time, and you have to invest that time and be willing to invest that time to nurture that relationship and let it grow to where it can stand the test of time. It takes an investment of time
Hmm.
to really to build the rapport with one another, to build the relationship to where it can stand that test of time. And looking back 20 years later, expecting things to be perfect right out of the gate. And my wife and I joke about this now, because when we first got together, it was like, oh, we're going to get married and we're going to move to Houston and we're going to live this fantasy life and life is going to be great. We literally had that discussion at that age, and you believed it.
Hmm.
You believed it. And then, man, have there been some bumpy road along the way. And my wife and I have an amazing relationship where she is my absolute best friend in life, and I will be with her, and she will be with me until our days are over with. But no marriage is easy, no relationship is easy, and the things that we've gone through over the years, there's been some trials and tribulations through that. And at 18, when you're, like you said, you're immature, you're inexperienced, you haven't really had a lot of those lessons to learn. If it doesn't prepare you well, to be able to tackle those, big decisions in a relationship that you have to make. So it's a long way of saying, it takes time and investment, and your perspective at 18 is going to be completely different from when you're 30 and 35 and 40. And your definition of what a relationship should be, or love, or connection, again, your definition is going to change over time. It's going to evolve as you get more mature and more experienced and such. So, you said it perfectly earlier. You can't just rush in and just think that at 18, like, oh, this is my Prince Charming or Cinderella or whoever.
Right.
I have girls, so
Yep.
that's all I have references to. Guys, don't hate me, but you get the point.
Yep.
So,
You made an interesting comment that I want to circle back on about how when you and your wife were 18 and you were going to get married and move to Houston and have great jobs and start a family and have a house and like live this fantasy life. I would argue that you're living that fantasy life.
yeah.
So the other interesting point and thing I would tell myself as an 18-year-old is in relationship to what you just said is you need to define what happiness looks like, and you need to understand that your happiness and your confidence as a young man, as a young adult, you define that. You don't want to let other people define that, because the problem that we still deal with today is the target's always moving. You just did everything that you said you were going to do. You got married. You have a wonderful relationship with your wife. You have a beautiful family. You both have happy, healthy kids. You have great jobs. You have a beautiful home. You drive good cars. Like, what are we complaining about, right? And not that you're complaining, but you get what I'm saying, right? But what the issue is in the mindset that we get stuck in is the target's always moving, right? So
Yeah.
it's like now, if you make $150,000 a year, you're like, man, I wish I made 200. And then when you make 200, you're like, I wish I made 250. If you live in a 2,500 square foot house, you're like, man, I wish our house was a little bigger. And then you get that bigger house, and you're like, oh man, I wish our house was a little bigger. If you get the Lexus, you're looking for the Lambo. It's interesting, and this is like a message to my 18-year-old self is you need to sit down regularly and really think and reflect, what does happiness mean to me?
Mhm.
Not what does happiness mean to the world. You don't want to let other people define happiness with you. We've all heard that saying of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, that's a common thing that's been around for decades. And there's some validity to that statement, because we are always chasing what we see. And with the TikTokification and Instagram and things, we get on our phones and we're like, man, that guy's the same age as me and he owns an NFL team. I must think I'm doing something wrong. It's like, no, you're not doing anything wrong. He's an anomaly, and he probably sacrificed a lot to get that NFL team, or he's miserable behind closed doors and you just don't know it. So I think message to my 18-year-old self, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, is sit down, define what your definition of happiness is, and understand that your definition of happiness and your own self-confidence needs to be defined by you, not
Mhm.
other people around you.
The only thing I would add to that is what's interesting at the age of 18, there's a lot of self enrichment, like self indulgence. A lot of people, myself included, at 18, like, oh, I graduated college. I've got this new car or a new job.
100%.
Like, I want to go buy the new
I
car.
did that.
Or, yeah, exactly. Right. Like,
Yep.
it's all about kind of like that self enrichment, that kind of those self desires that you have. And it probably feels good in the moment, and you're kind of probably proud of yourself at the time, like, oh, I worked hard to get this, right? But what you realize is, especially now, older, is like, as you mentioned, you have to define what your happiness is. But I have found in my life that as I've gotten older, my happiness comes from serving and helping others. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm talking about my wife. I'm talking about my kids and my family, in my career, or the people that we've been so fortunate enough to network with and work with over the years. Is how do I be, how do I serve them to the best that I can? How do I become a valuable member to the network that I'm a part of? And that's where happiness comes from for me, is just being not so much focused on my own self enrichment, but how do I help those around me? And that's a, that's something that I think happens to a lot of people as they get older, is they realize that happiness is, it's not about your own self-interest. It's about the people that you impact around you, and we don't have to get too deep into that, but that's been, that's something that I have personally done. I'm like you. I've 18. I was like, it's all about me, 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 and
Yep.
whatnot. But life has a funny way of humbling you and kind of, like you said, throwing those wrenches in your game plan or kind of rewriting your script that make you rewrite your script. And you end up discovering that happiness, the definition of happiness changes over time, I feel like, versus when you were 18 and just getting life started.
When you're 18, you're selfish. You're thinking about me. Your definition, this is me. I mean, your definition of happiness was very arguably superficial. Be thinking about how much money's in your bank account, and you're often very shallow at that time. You're worried more about your looks, your partner's look, how you look in front of other people, how nice your apartment is, how nice your car is. But that's all, it's all BS. It's all smoke and mirrors at the end of the day, because we all know people, even our age, still to this day, that they have the nice house, the nice car. They even may even make good money, but they're still living paycheck to paycheck. It goes back to those forming good habits, being wise with your money. The other thing we didn't get to talk about, and you mentioned a little bit, was, and I would tell myself this again at 18 years old, and I've been very blessed. I don't think I've, for the most part, I don't think I've broken this rule, but I just know a lot of people that have, is be very, very, very careful who you surround yourself with. And that is something I was very blessed with. My dad and my parents, mostly my dad, when I was younger, I thought he was too strict, you know, very selective about who came into the house, very selective of where I went. And as a young, teenager, especially when you're 12, 13, 14, you're trying to do sleepovers and go hang out with the boys or whatever, and you got to be home at 8 or 9, you're just like, you're mad. You're like, you're holding me back, kind of
Hmm.
thing, right? Looking back on that now, being a dad, being in my late 30s, that message, that seed that was planted for me was so powerful, because I was very fortunate, lucky, blessed that along my journey from 18 to where I'm at now, I've been very fortunate to not surround myself with bad characters, bad apples, fall into bad habits, gangs, drugs, alcohol, or just going down a rabbit hole of the the types of people that tend to weigh you down. I mean, you have most people are born with like a fire and a desire to do amazing things in life, and I personally believe everyone has the ability, when they're born, to do amazing things in life. But what rips that out of people? It's their surroundings, it's their
Mm.
environment, right? And there are people, unfortunately, that grow up in lower income neighborhoods and lower income environments, and households with single parents or different things like that. And those definitely have an impact and make it harder for people to claw their way out of those situations. And I was very fortunate to not deal with that. But also, as I went through high school, as I went through college, as I got into my corporate career and work, I had like a spidey sense, or like a sixth sense. When I met somebody, I would tell myself, that's not a person I want to be around.
Right.
And even if they would try to wheel me in, I would just push back. And the other way around, if I met somebody, like the first time I met you and John and just some other people in our network, I'm like, I don't really care what happens business wise, even though of course we're all starting the relationship for business. These are just good people.
Right.
Right? These are good people that I feel like I can have a drink with. I would introduce this person to my family, and not have my parents go like, why are you hanging out with that guy? Somebody you can be very proud to stand next to. I think that's a message that not enough 18-year-olds have, and unfortunately fall into traps. Do you have any stories of maybe some instances of you almost going down the rabbit hole, or going down the rabbit hole, or some things that you've seen?
No, I'm similar to you, where I've been very blessed myself to surround myself with people that I have trusted, that I have become a part of my family, and I've always strove to surround myself with people that are living a life in a way that I want to,
Mm,
whether that be in church, whether that be at work, investments, careers, entrepreneurship, you name it. I've always strived to be around people that were like me, ambitious, but level headed, um, that had good moral character, at least moral values that align with mine. And so I'm like you, I've always been surrounded by great people in my life. Now, I've gotten distracted by people that have maybe talked a good game or said some things that were, I felt at the time like, oh, this is really exciting. This is great. And I've maybe kind of joined with them and to work on like let's say there was one example without going into detail. There was a business adventure. I was 20, I may have been like 25 at the time, something like that, 25, 26. And there was a business opportunity to to go buy some specific type of real estate. And I met with this guy, and he was a really nice guy and whatnot. And he had this like really great vision of just building out this crazy complex of something. I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. Sure. And I was lured in by the dream of it. And I was like, oh yeah. And this, if it worked out, I was like, oh, this could be highly lucrative. Sure. And then long story short, it was nowhere. It went nowhere. There was no substance there. It was
Mm.
just all talk. And, and again, didn't make the guy a bad guy or anything like that, but it was just an example of just getting distracted by not really being, um, not really kind of networking with the right person that really kind of had, those good, consistent habits that were really focused and had a foundation that was more credible, I guess, so to speak. So it's kind of a minor example of that, but it just goes to show you the influence people have on you. And that's something that at 18, you don't really appreciate or don't really understand very well is the people you surround yourself will absolutely play an impact and have an impact on your life, good and bad. And for me, growing up in a household where I had two parents that were high school dropouts, but they were like typical blue collar, but they worked their tails off to give us a great life. And my dad, it was just an absolute like, um, I don't know what the word is, but strict on education. Education was everything. Like in his mind, the the successful people, they go to school,
Mhm.
make the grades, they graduate, they get a good job. And I did that. And he kind of instilled that fear in me from the time I was young to not veer off the beaten path. You stay focused, you start a good job, you start a good career. And maybe this might be a false assumption, but typically I think if you have a career, you're going to be surrounded by other people that have kind of gone through similar, they've all gone through college or some
Yep.
type of education. They all had to start from zero. So like typically you're involved with people that are kind of like you when you're in a career. So um, I say that to say I've always been fortunate enough to be surrounded by people that were at least aligned with kind of where I was in life, either professionally, morally, but again, the people that you surround yourself do have an influence on you, and it's so important. If I could tell myself at 18 as well, you need to put those boundaries up, and you need to protect
Yep.
that as much as you can.
Especially when you have a family.
Especially when you have a family, you
Yep.
have to vet the people that you let come into your life, and you have to keep your guardrails up because it is very easy to get distracted or get um, influenced in a way that can impact you, both again, positively or negatively.
If I was staring at my 18-year-old self today, I would tell myself that the most powerful thing you can do is find a strong mentor. So just like we're talking about bad influences and good influences in our life, one of the things I've learned along the way is that no matter where you're at in life, whether you're 18 or you're 30, late 30s, even 40s, 50s, the most successful people I know and the definition of success is very different. We're not necessarily talking financial. Success could mean you have an amazing marriage.
Yes.
Success could mean you're, really close to your faith. You're really close in the church. Success might mean your kids love you. So we're not just talking about monetary success. Having strong mentors and people that are where you want to be and people that are willing to give back along, share their journey with you and help you along the way. I think that's the real key to success in life. When you find the strong mentor in professionally in your corporate career that helps you through the ranks, or entrepreneurially, you're trying to start a business, somebody that helps you start that business, somebody that helps you grow, somebody that invests into you, maybe not financially, but with knowledge and advice, phone calls, time, lunches, dinners, things like that. Or if you have a mentor who you see from a distance, and and I use the term mentor very loosely because it's not like I go up to you and say, Cody, you're my mentor,
Right.
right? It's just
Yeah.
somebody that's in your circle that you go, man, I like what that guy is doing. I like how his house is ran. I like when I go over to their house, or like when we have kids one day, we want to be like them, like my friend's
Yeah.
parents. See how close they are, how much they still love each other after 25 years of marriage, how the house is well ran and balanced, and everyone sort of knows their roles and responsibilities. It's not just like mom doing everything or dad doing everything. The kids are disciplined and sort of no rules when yeah. It's just a good, tightly ran household. And that's just one type of example. But there are mentors all around you if you're looking for them. And when you find them, I think sticking to them and trying to learn as much as you can, that's really the key to being successful at anything in life, whether you're trying to be really good at your health, really good at your family life, at your being a husband, being a father, being a great employee, or being an entrepreneur, is find those mentors that are where you want to be.
You kind of already touched on it before, but just I think it's worth revisiting is that at 18, and I was guilty of this too, the number one thing that I was thinking about was money.
Mhm.
Money. I need to get a career started or I need to get a job because I want to go make money. I want to start getting ahead in life. And the most important thing that I think you can focus on, instead of focusing on money, focus on the people you put in your life, that you allow to come in your life. Who do you surround yourself with? You build that network of people that you're gonna you're gonna trust, that's gonna go through life with you. Those mentors, those people that you can confide in, those people that are gonna have your back and they're gonna support you no matter what you're going through. And that goes for relationships. It goes with picking a spouse. That goes with your mentors, the people that you would confide in with some of your most sensitive details of your life. That to me is probably looking back, one of the things that I would coach myself is focus less on money and more on the people that you want to really go through life with.
I think mentorship is one of the most powerful things you can seek as a young adult. And I think if I was 18, telling myself, and I remember thinking this when I was 18, I was still shy and inexperienced in life. And I lacked a lot of confidence, to be quite frank. And I think a lot of 18-year-olds might look confident on the outside, but inside they're maybe not as confident. I
Yeah.
think having the confidence to go up to people that are where you want to be and tell them your story, what you're trying to do, and try to seek wisdom and guidance and advice from them. That's one of the smartest things I wish I did more when I was 18 years old. Because again, I've seen people at conferences, big real estate conferences, where the average age is 40 plus for the most part. There's 18-year-old kids in the audience. Like somebody's parenting really well. They took their kids there, right?
Yeah.
And I wish I had the opportunity to imagine if you were in those same rooms that you and I have both been in our mid 30s.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were in that room at 17, 18, 19 years old. We would not that there's anything wrong with our lives, but we would have done much more probably earlier in life. And it's not necessarily financially beneficial. Hopefully that would have been the case too, but we would have just had a lot more experience, a lot more losses so that we can get to our wins much faster.
I look back and I do wish that having this conversation, if I could go back and coach myself about some of the things that we talked about, things would look a lot different for sure. Maybe I would have reached success sooner in life. Maybe I'd have had some more financial wins, or I could have saved myself some heartache in my relationship, or things like you're absolutely right. There's things would have been different. But I also think that that's the value of just life in general and experience is it teaches you. It's the best teacher. And I never look back on my life and say, I wish this would have been different. I wish I could have done that different. At first I did. When I was younger, I did. Oh man, I wish this and that.
Yep.
Now I look back and I was like, that was a really good lesson I should have learned from. That was how can I apply this moving forward? But it makes me reflect on kind of the last lesson that I would tell myself is, and we talked about this on a prior episode, is time is your most valuable asset. And when you're 18 years old,
You have so much of it.
you think time is infinite. You don't know anything about boundaries because you're just getting started. And you have in your mind at that time, at least I did, I thought like, I have all the time in the world to do whatever I want to do. Now, I am not old at 40. I don't believe I'm old at 40. Plus, I think I look better now than I do then. So, I don't know if my wife would
I was
agree.
gonna say, let's ask Kira. Let's phone her in.
I don't know if I'm aging as gracefully as I think I am. But looking back at 40 now, like I said, doing this self reflection, you realize how fast life goes by. And to your point you made earlier, where every decision you make, there's a time consequence to that. Some good, some bad. And when the certain things that you don't do well set you back, there's all those years that are months, days, years, whatever that you wish you can get back. those, if that stacks up, it starts compounding like we
Mm,
discussed. You start looking back and you realize, like, holy smokes, like I've had all this time to go and live life and do these things, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted to, but it was because of all these other decisions I've made. And not to say that you, like, again, at 40, I don't feel like I'm running out of time, but it is a very interesting point in your life where you start to realize, like, man, I'm kind of at the halfway point, and my most productive years are still here and they're still ahead of me, but I'm kind of more towards the back half of that more so than
sure.
the front end. And what I realize now in looking back is, your time is so valuable. So make it worth it. Make the decisions that you're going to be proud of later in life, that you can reflect on as, like, man, I'm so glad that I went through that.
Mm. No, I think that's a great last lesson. I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self too is we focus so much of thinking about where can I invest my money. Change your paradigm, change your mindset. I wish I did that more when I was that age to thinking about where should I be investing my time. And that may mean time with who you spend time with, or your relationships, your mentors. It may mean time spent at work. What are you working on? Where are you working? What are you learning while you're there? Uh, and then just in general, when you wake up every day, do you feel like you move the needle a little bit, right? Sometimes it's, how life is. Sometimes it's two steps forward, three steps back. But at the end of the day, you tend to have more progress uh, spending your time wisely than if you weren't spending your time wisely, right? And when you're 18, you feel like you have nothing but time. And I will say, I consume some Gary V content just kind of here and there, and he has a very interesting paradigm about time. And I maybe I'm buying into it now because I am getting older, but he likes to say there's so many videos of him talking about this online where people come up to him and they say things like, I'm 35 and I haven't found success yet, and I feel like I'm running out of time. And I'm not going to use some of the language that he uses, which is a little bit more colorful, but he's like, dude, that's BS. You're making up stuff. You're putting stuff in your head. You're telling yourself stories. You're still young at 35. You're still young at 40. You still have a lot of time. The average male in the US lives into their early mid 70s, right? With the advancement of healthcare, the reality is by the time you and I get much closer to that age, it's probably going to be pushing 80s, high 70s, maybe even low 80s, right? So the idea of you being out of time at 35 or 40, it's just not a narrative that I'm not buying into that narrative. Now, I will say time is still valuable. When you look at our days, like I used to wake up and have a clear schedule and I could stay up till as late as I want or wake up as early as I want. Now it's like very structured because I have a toddler and typically I start working on my projects for my business at a certain time, and then I got to pick my daughter up at a certain time, and then you got to have family dinner, and then like there's a routine there. There are responsibilities, so time is still very valuable. But I don't think we're running out of time. But it doesn't mean that you should invest it poorly. It's not like let me do something silly, and oh well, I have plenty more of it anyway. But I will say we've talked about this too. Success is sort of built on a mountain of failures. So you got to be taking some risks. You got to be doing some things, not looking for home runs, but you got to be making some moves that even at 18 years old. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough failures to make you wise and help you find success.
And, just to kind of hit that point home is, like I said, at 18, when you think time is infinite, what we've learned now through our experiences is that time is very scarce,
Hmm.
and it's so valuable. And so now I kind of approach my time as kind of having a scarcity mindset. You're absolutely right. We're not out of time yet. We still have plenty of life to live, Lord willing. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I capitalize and maximize the
Sure.
moment. I want to make sure that I don't miss those the most important times with my family, with my wife, with my kids. Um, I don't want to, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to elevate myself and move, like you said, move that needle a little bit every day. So that way I can be present and live life to the fullest in the moment. And I think that's where I'm at in life now.
What I'm hearing is, and again, I think a message I would tell myself at 18 is you need to learn to say no. that's really the powerful lesson that I don't think enough young people do, and I know I didn't, is you say yes to everything, and you kinda need to, I would argue, to some degree, to get those life experiences and realize, like, "Ah, I didn't like that so much." But as time gets more scarce or more valuable, we all have the same amount of time in the day. It's just you have to spend it more wisely. The time is more valuable to you. You value it more at an older age. What you learn, and I think this is a skill that could be applied at 18 years old, especially if you're looking for good mentorship and to make smart choices and to be patient and all these things that we talked about today, is you have to learn to say no to things. And that's how you protect your time. Is you protect your time by getting invited somewhere and going, nope, I'd rather spend tonight with my daughter. I'd rather spend tonight with my family. I worked really hard this past week. I want to take the weekend off and do nothing. Or you just learn to say no to things. Or business opportunities. Uh, Real estate's a great example. Like, imagine like when you first started, every deal that hits your desk, you're telling yourself, like, man, I got to find a way to make this
This
work.
is the
They all
one.
work. They all work. Well, they all work, right? It's like you tell yourself, like, I can find a way to make this work, and you can to some degree. Everything works at a certain price, but as you get more experience, you get more wise. You start quickly going, nope, 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 nope. Like, you can look at an investment opportunity in 60 seconds and go, nope, not worth my time. You protect your time, even digging any deeper, because it doesn't check one of your boxes as an investor. And it's that same sort of approach in life: is these things are presenting themselves to me no longer check my boxes, whether it's my definition of happiness, it doesn't align with my goals of being patient, doesn't align with my mentorship goals or my lifestyle goals. So I just say no to
Mhm.
things. And I think if you're able to clearly define those at a young age, which I think we could have done a better job of, and again, something I would have told my younger self, would have had probably less heartache, less mistakes made for sure, and then ultimately would have just probably been a little bit more happier. Because I think that's something when you're in your late teens, early 20s, you're kind of going through like the ebbs and flows of life. You're not like sad or depressed or anything like that, but you're just very quite unsure of yourself because you're not sure which direction you're going in life. So you get a little bit more certainty faster.
And take it for somebody who's lived that life of chasing shiny objects, especially when I was much younger. I think I've shared with you, like, I wouldn't be here sitting in this chair with you today, if it wouldn't have been for kind of chasing those shiny objects.
Sure.
It's such a great summary of the show. You're absolutely right. Is staying focused, like I said, value your time, put those guardrails up, focus on the people that are most important to you in your life that you want to surround yourself with, and all the other things that we discuss. And it's it's a great reminder. It's a fun exercise to go back and
It is.
reflect on, like I said, life and the decisions you made along the way. And time gives you so much perspective. But it's been a fun journey. It's a great ride, and like you said earlier, the goalpost is always going to move. You're
Yep.
always going to be rewriting your script somehow. I think it's important for us, and that's kind of why we're here today too. Is part of these conversations is it's kind of fun. It's a fun exercise. It's therapeutic. Kind of talk about some of the things that we've gone through, but it's also to hopefully help others that are going through something similar. There may be some people that may be tuning in that might be listening that have kids that are coming up in their teenage years. They're about to be 18, and they've been through some of the same stuff we have as well. Well, cool. Well, how do we influence our kids in a positive way
Right.
so that way they can hopefully make better decisions than we did, or maybe they can they can kind of mimic some of the things that we did that we were good in life or something.
And some of the lessons we've described today are timeless.
Timeless. Yeah.
They're timeless. These are not like, oh, you missed the opportunity to do them at 18. Oops, too late.
Yeah.
Like, no, you like, these are things that I tell myself daily, and I still fall off the wagon. I still need to work on sharpening the saw on these habits.
Well, how many times have you been told, and I've been told
Mhm.
from other people that have gone through it, they're telling us these same lessons
Yep.
here. And at the time, you're like, okay, I've heard it before, whatever. But now going through it and reflecting on it and actually experiencing, like, it's funny because I tell myself sometimes I feel like I've become my dad.
Yep.
It's like that. Was it the Progressive commercials?
Yep.
but but it is true. Like you realize that, man, the the advice that you've gotten that we are now kind of also we're kind of sharing with the world too is it comes through experience. It comes through going through those lessons and such. And so it's cool to be able to kind of share that and hopefully, like I said, be a
Yep.
positive impact.
That brings up one last thing I want to wrap up the show with, and kind of goes hand in hand with the show. The last thing I think I would tell myself as an 18-year-old, it's part of the motivation for the show is, as a man, is don't be afraid to talk to people about things. I think that's another lesson that I didn't learn until it was too late for me. Not too late, I should say, but I wished I learned it at an earlier age. Like when you're 18, 19, 20, when you're in your mid 20s, you're going through that discovery phase of who am I as an adult? Who am I going to be? The decisions you make aren't necessarily going to ruin your life, but they have an echoing impact for years, maybe even decades. As you're going through those things, you can often get advice, make wiser decisions, and end up in a better place if you just talk to people about it. So whether you're 18 years old and you're listening to this, or you're 40 and you're listening to this, it's never too late to start talking to people about things. Listening to self-improvement podcasts or reading self-improvement books, finding mentors in books or in shows or podcasts. And then at the end of the day, I would argue that almost everyone has at least one person in their life that if you opened up to them would be a really good person to be a sounding board with. Not necessarily you're looking for advice, but just somebody to talk to. So if you're going through something in life, don't feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? The feeling you probably felt when you were 18 and you had that first kid, like the world's on my shoulders, you're feeling it. Well, you probably won't running around telling everyone about the pressure and the weight you were feeling. And not that it would have changed anything, but it might have helped. And some people do start making bad decisions, and having that mentor, talking to people about it, can help them avoid those types of situations. So if you're listening and you don't do a good job of talking to people about some of the challenges you're going through, whether they're personal, fitness related, health related, financial, career, faith, mental health, marriages, relationships, whatever it may be. I personally believe the world is full of good people, and there's plenty of good people out there. Someone in your circle that's probably within arm's reach that could be very helpful if you just open up and talk to them.
I know sometimes it's not always easy for people, but hopefully we can inspire people to do that. And if anything, obviously continue to tune in here to the show, and hopefully we can be an outlet for people like that. How do I open up? How do I talk about these things? How do I kind of break down those barriers, so to speak, and kind of become a little bit more vulnerable? And
Yeah.
so it's fun, but that's a great episode, man. Great conversation.
Hashtag no regrets.
Hashtag no regrets.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Cool. Well, cheers. See you on the next one.
See you. Appreciate you being here with us. Stay connected by joining our weekly newsletter called The Forge, delivered straight to your inbox with thoughts on business, work, family, and becoming a better man. Make sure to check out forgingbettermen.com to sign up. If this show hits home for you, then hit the follow button and leave us a review to help us reach more guys who would benefit from it. This is Under Pressure.